Hey guys, it's Liz. Welcome back to the channel where we binge our childhood shows just to feel something again. Hope you're making the most of it. Today we're going to be drawing, once again, Inuyasha and Kagome together. I am in a fan art frenzy, and that is just something you guys are going to have to deal with for a minute. As of this recording, I finished the show probably just a couple days ago, and I'm obsessed and I want to scream. So I wanted to spend some time comparing and contrasting the feelings that you get when you're watching television as a child versus as an adult. But before I talk about that, I wanted to remind everyone of my open invitation for an artist interview. Just let me know on Instagram or in the comments if you are interested in being interviewed, and the link for that is in the description. So, as for my last fan art drawing, I went into detail about how I watched Inuyasha as a child long before I was allowed to. If you haven't seen it, fret not, for I will explain what you need to know once more to get this ball rolling. I started watching Inuyasha at around 9 or 10 when they were showing it on Adult Swim. Adult Swim is the late night channel on Cartoon Network, so on weekends I would stay up watching that. I didn't actually like a lot of the shows that were available on that channel. I just wanted to watch TV in general. And then at some point I stumbled on Inuyasha and I fell in love with it. I was miserable when I'd look at the menu for what shows they would be playing for the night, and Inuyasha wasn't on the list. And I had no idea what was going on with the overall storyline just because I didn't have access to episodes to actually piece together what they were trying to say. But the romance story between Kagome and Inuyasha filled up my tiny child brain for a long time. The dynamic was really relatable to me. I really enjoyed the individual characters. I thought they were really fun to watch. As someone who spent their childhood and teenagerdom, quote-unquote, hating romance, I actually ended up being very inspired by the concepts and tropes they employed. So watching the show as a child, I didn't even realize how much it shaped my expectations of television. I was just, enjoying it. I watched it because I like it, and I like it because I like it. And when you're a kid, that's good enough. But the frustrating part of enjoying things as a child is that your exposure to your favorite media might be limited. Maybe it's because I grew up in the early 2000s before people used the internet for literally anything and everything. But back then, it was just around the time TiVo started being a thing, where you could record your shows and then watch them later. That was revolutionary in my household. But even then, this was a show that I was not allowed to be seeing. So part of the thrill of watching it was doing so in secret. Even though my parents allowed me to watch Naruto when I was the same age, when the only difference there was the use of swear words, and they let me watch South Park with them, This video isn't about me being exposed to awful television at a young age. What I'm saying is that childhood has the struggle of being limited by authority figures. Because even if I was allowed to watch as much Inuyasha as I wanted, I would still have to go to school 5 days a week. I would still have to share the television with my other family members. So even if I was allowed to watch as much TV as I wanted, I still had to share. So I was still being limited there. But when you're watching the show, you are experiencing unmitigated joy and freedom until your parents tell you it's time to stop. And as a child, you are always seeking the most enjoyable thing and constantly being told no, or at least that's what it feels like. And adulthood has its own challenges to enjoying media. It's largely because we are much more critical than we used to be. We're no longer just absorbing absorbing information like a sponge, but rather we are constantly critiquing it. So while watching Inuyasha, and I started getting into later episodes, people were complaining that the art style and voice acting not having the same nostalgic feeling as before. Kagome's voice actress retired by the time they made the final act, so having a new voice for the main character was a little distracting to me. The haters can have that one. Something I noticed about watching the show is that I only was able to enter nostalgia mode when I was in the right setting. It wasn't enough to just binge the show all day in broad daylight, which I did do a couple times, but I also had to watch it at night before bed. The feeling of being wrapped in blankets in the dark, watching my favorite show, teleported me back to that place emotionally. I almost felt like I was getting away with something again. So if you're struggling with recreating how you felt as a child, do not forget the world around you. Maybe if there was a particular snack that you enjoyed at the time. Maybe you only watched that show in the living room or something like that. The only way I could have felt more at home was if I watched it in the living room and I hired my roommate to scold me if she caught me watching TV so late. But being able to critically analyze why we like a show is a very valuable skill. Understanding what makes the show good allows you to sink your teeth into the media that you consume. And recognize the parts that may be harmful and inspire you to make your own content. For one thing, I realized that I love romance stories, but not over the span of a simple 2-hour movie. This anime drags out the relationship building for 200 fucking episodes. It drove me nuts, but that's why I loved it. You fell in love and had to sit there and wait for it. They had to hand it to you when they were ready. This relationship dynamic isn't always the best, especially since it's between a 15-year-old and a 200-year-old demon. Between a 15-year-old and a 200-year-old demon who is also emotionally 15. The result here is that the character's dealing with two-timing and poor communication is not as relatable to me, who is a grown woman. Now that I am an adult, if I have a problem with my partner, we talk about it. That element of the story doesn't make it toxic exactly, but rather it's something for the younger audience to relate to, not necessarily something to learn from. So now when I write my own stories, I have the ability to draw out a romantic plotline without those communication issues. So I guess one of the biggest advantages of enjoying something as an adult as opposed to childhood is that your parents literally can't tell you not to. If you don't live with your parents, they can't tell you not to enjoy the things that you love. It's the best feeling in the world, but that comes at the cost of feeling untethered in a way. Being taken out of the world for a couple hours is great, but who is going to reel you back in? That's part of why I had the self-imposed limitation of watching the show before bed. That way, I was only taking in a couple episodes a night, so it slowed down my progress and let me enjoy each episode more instead of just getting a whole bunch of info put in your lap at once. Everything in moderation, right? So sure, no one can tell me not to binge watch my favorite shows, but if I started too early in the day, then I couldn't focus on anything. My attention would be divided between watching the show and trying to get some form of work done. So I'd go to bed at night having not absorbed half the story that I saw on Inuyasha and getting almost no work done. So it was like a really bad mix of both. The best part of not living with your parents is that you can start doing drugs, but how are you going to stop? That's the thing. It's one of those issues where it's super awesome to be free, but you'd be happiest if you had a way to get back down without hurting yourself. I know that television conventions have changed. The concept of binging 100 hours worth of information a week is normal now, but it probably shouldn't be. I just don't hang out with that market that Netflix profits off of. To me, it seems that a lot of the information they're selling you is violent or painful to watch. People are demanding unhappy endings to stories, and I hate that. I work a really sad job where patients are in worse situations than I could have ever imagined. I don't want to come home and turn on Netflix and watch victims suffer and not receive justice. I see that with my own 2 eyeballs all the time. I want to watch cartoon characters kiss. That's a whole other rant about my opinions on television. But what I'm saying is, the nostalgia goggles stay on during sex. JK, adulthood is just childhood with a longer leash. Enjoy the things you used to love. You are still the same person, you just do it on purpose now. So let me know in the comments what childhood show you binged to get you through quarantine. Alright, so what the fuck am I drawing right now? Right now, in this part of the video, I am coloring, and I had to get a little more choppy with the recording because it ended up being around 3 hours, and I didn't want to cut it into 2 parts again, so what you'll see is that I will color this, and then I will cut away to fix it so that all the colors are still in the lines. I'm still trying to figure out how to properly do that. Like, some artists are able to just paint bucket fill the area, and I don't know how to do that for this program yet. And like always, there's something goofy going on with the face that I don't fix until the last minute. Don't worry about Inuyasha's eyebrows. I do fix them, I swear. Just give me a minute. I'm really happy with how this drawing came out. I referenced a dance pose, and the person who posted the references, they mentioned how a half drawing like this, where it ends around the waistline, how it's like more intimate, and I understand that now that I drew it because the composition is really nice. I have this habit of drawing characters in full body, but that takes the face farther away from the viewer, so it's less personal. And I really wanted to focus on the way they looked at each other and just the motion of their clothing, and I had a lot of fun doing this one. I think it came out really nice. I'm really happy with my style of line art. I really do like it a lot. And this necklace comes out really cool. I think it turns out, it's probably my favorite part of the whole thing. I think this one came out much better than the last piece of fan art. I used a more realistic reference than I did for the screen cap redraw. The problem with using a screenshot from a cartoon as opposed to a carefully constructed reference is that you are referencing the artist's mistakes. There are gaps in my visual library, which is why I use references, but animators have to take shortcuts to keep it moving. That means they simplify character designs or anatomy just so that they can move on to the next slide, or whatever, the next frame. That's why screen cap redraws are such a good way to find those gaps. Meanwhile, referencing photos and realistic art bridges those gaps between what you see versus what you understand. Please excuse my voice, I'm getting over a cold. It turns out I don't have COVID. A+, self. So what I'm trying to get better at is how characters interact with each other. Most of my art shows characters individually, which means that they might not go together. I want to draw characters hugging, kissing, fighting, whatever, which means I have to know what it looks like when they touch. And if you struggle with that, or if you have any tips for how to get better at that, then let me know. But I think that's about it. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you made it this far in the video, I assume you liked it. If that is indeed true, then like the video, subscribe to my channel, ring the bell, and comment below. It means a lot to me to know that you're interested. So thanks guys, I'll see you next Tuesday.